So hi there and welcome to today's Intro to Pastels art class. This is class 1, and in today's class we're going to be doing our little colour wheel and our pear. So if you have downloaded this video, you'll have found your notes attached to that as well, and also an image of a pear that you can use as a reference photo. So pop that up onto your iPad or onto a printed piece of paper. Make sure it's close to you and in front of you. And if you set it up in front of you as much as you can, then you don't have to keep moving your head. You know, when you're trying to look at something constantly and you've got to keep doing this. But if you only have to move your eyes and not your head, then it just makes things a little bit easier. So I'm Jeanne Cotter. This is my final online Zoom Intro to Pastels course. I'm going to be kind of retiring from teaching after this, but if you're watching the video, then you'll be able to access everything on video. So what I'm going to do now is flick my screen over so that you can see my table. And on my table, I've got my paper, my board, and all my pastels and bits and pieces, and we'll get started. Before that, if you haven't already, rush off to the kitchen, grab a little cereal bowl, or find a compass because we need to draw a circle for our colour wheel. All right, let me just flick the screen over. I'm going to mute all the people who are here. Having said that, if you do have a question or you want to ask me something or say something, please unmute yourself during the class and speak up. Okay, so don't be shy. There's no stupid questions. All right, so if you don't understand something or want to know a little bit more, please don't hesitate to ask, because if you're asking it, everyone else probably is too. So you be the brave one, okay?
Thanks,
All right, no worries. So just muting everybody for background noise now. Lovely, and then I will go to share screen, and that will take me to my iPad, hopefully, if everything works as it's meant to. So I'm just going to swipe on here, screen mirroring. So far, so good. Okay. So that should be working. No? Okay, try again. We were just saying before that when we do these test runs, everything works. And then when you do it for real, it decides it's not. So I'm just going to press stop share for a minute because it didn't want to play that time. And we'll try again. Let's do this again. Most annoying when it doesn't work. It's only ever not worked once for me before. Come on. Rightio. Restart your device. That's not very helpful. All right, bear with me. I might have to turn the iPad off and here's the off button there. Sorry, ladies. Technology. Change that screen back again so you can see me. And then we'll have another try. So the challenge is, I don't know why it's doing this. Anyway, we'll get there in the end, hopefully. Otherwise, I'll have to find a different way. I used to try and record or do the classes standing at an easel and having the camera behind me, but that was really difficult because I kept getting my head in the way and you couldn't see what was going on. You know, have you ever tried to do that? Yeah, it's tricky, isn't it? So yeah, it didn't really work out, but anyway, Then I discovered this way. My husband, who's an amazing woodworker, made me this little thing that I can put my iPad on and put it above my desk. So it was really, really clever. All right, I'm on again. Let's see if we can make this work. Come on, we can do it. Okay. Let me see. Not working. Very, very frustrating. Okay. Yeah. It's doing that, you know, that windy thing that says it's not connecting. It's all plugged in though, so it should be fine. Frustrating. In the meantime, you could draw your circle onto your page, so your black paper. So I've got a piece of black paper here. So what you need to do that with is a pastel pencil. So do you have a pastel pencil or a charcoal pencil? And you can draw the circle, trace around your bowl onto your black paper. So that'll be a good start. Once you've got it drawn, oh, come on, this is very frustrating. It literally worked this morning when I had it all up and running. Yeah, so once you've drawn your circle, now depending on what paper you've got too, so what I've got here is a piece of, it's this one, the Canson pastel drawing paper. Okay, so I'm just going to use that for my colour wheel. And then for the second part of the class, I've got my colour fix paper, which is this one, which is the one I would have recommended in your notes. And it's a bit scratchy. It feels like sandpaper. So it doesn't really matter which one you're going to use today, but I just wanted to point out that there are a couple of options that you can buy. And I just had this black one in the drawer, so I thought I'd use that. So it's not as scratchy as the colour fix. It's sort of smoother, but it's got a textured side. So it's got a textured side. It's a little bit hard to see in the light there. And it's got a smooth side. You can't really see, but you can feel it with your fingers. So I'm going to use my textured side today. I'm going to grab my plate, pop it on the paper and trace around it. So you just want to draw a circle. What I've got is a charcoal pencil or a pastel pencil, so something in a light colour that you can see on the dark paper. If you're using light paper, then you might want to use a darker pencil. So whatever colour works for you that you can see nice and clearly on your paper. Okay, and then just draw your circle. Put your plate aside. You can use that later for lunch or something. And then I've got a circle drawn just like that with my white pencil. Okay, easy peasy. Once you've done that, we're going to divide it into 6 pie pieces. So when I say pie pieces, see that colour wheel there? That's going to be the end result. So see how it's divided into all those little triangles? So you want to rule a line across the centre of your circle and then divide it up into, as equal as you can, triangles that look like pies. So find the middle. So I usually measure it from one side to the other. Mine is 16 centimetres, so the middle will be my 8, halfway. Just mark that as the middle point on your little circle and then draw a line through the centre. Like that. Okay. And then we want to create 6 pies. So you want to do another line across about 1/3 of the way across and then another one about another 1/3. I never get them even, so don't stress if you've got them slightly uneven. So that's the sort of thing you want to draw. Okay. And then we're going to fill each one in with a different colour. Excellent. Now, let's see if I can get this thing to work again. All right. No, it doesn't want to play. Shut that down again. And we'll carry on doing it the hard way. Sorry. I'll show you as I go what I'm doing. Okay, so the other thing I have is a little board. So if you have a board like that, then it means that you can tape your paper onto it. So what I like to do is get my piece of paper, tape it onto my board. That way the paper stays nice and still, and I don't have to keep holding it down to make sure that it's staying still in the right spot. So if you have a little board, yeah, perfect. Yep, that's great, Karen. Yep, a clip or a tape, whatever works for you. Because I'm working flat on my table, I'm finding that if I tape it down on the corners or all the way around the sides, whichever way you like, it just keeps your paper nice and still. So what I use is either masking tape or this blue tape. The blue tape is called, I think it's called 48-hour tape or something like that, that painters use when they're painting houses and things. And I find this quite good. It's a little bit more expensive than masking tape. So either one is fine, really. So I'm just going to tape my corners down because I don't really need to tape the whole page down. It just means that the paper stays nice and still on your board. If you're sitting on an easel, you might have a table easel there, then you'll be using clips or tape, whichever you prefer. But if you've got a clip, bulldog clips, or if you have a board that has a clip attached to it, then that's fine too. So you can see there, I've just very roughly taped each corner down so that it won't move around. Okay, so that stays nice and still then while I'm working on it, and I don't have to keep hanging on to it with my other hand. All right, so once you've got that taped down, then we want to be looking at the pastels that you need for today. So in the notes, I've written that we're just going to be using primary colours. So you're going to need a blue. This is a beautiful blue. So it's an ultramarine kind of blue. A nice, bright, strong blue. So something in a mid blue. You don't want it too dark. You don't want it very light. It's something mid blue like that. And I only say that because I love strong colours. If you don't have exactly that blue, then just use whatever you have in your box. Okay, so there's that blue. And this is actually an Art Spectrum square pastel. So there's pastels come in all kinds of shapes and sizes. So this is a lovely square one, which is really nice to use. And you can see how big that is, in my hand. The other types I use are these. So this is actually a schminky. So most pastels come in like a longer stick like that, a rounded kind of stick. That's a red. It's very dirty red. You'll also find that pastels, when they all sit together in your boxes, they tend to pick up colour from each other. So they get a bit grubby. I'm trying to get this in close. So that's my little red one. Lovely, rich red, beautiful colour. Yum, yum. That's a schminky pastel. Most of these come with a little paper label on them, but when you're using them, you want to tear the paper off. So then I forget what colour it actually is called. But that's a schminky. So it's very creamy. Schminkies are very creamy and soft, beautiful pastels, but they do fill up the paper very quickly. So that's the red. And then we need a yellow. So a nice bright sunshine yellow like that. Again, it's a little bit dirty. I've got a towel here that I'm wiping it on. Okay, so lovely, bright, yummy, yummy yellow. So there are three primary colours that we're going to be using today. All right. And then for later on, we're going to use purple. So I've just got a purple there. And I've also got a white and a black to use for later on for the pear. But for this little exercise, you just need those 3 primaries. So what we're going to do is fill in the triangles. So I'll just show you on the image again, on the notes that you'll have there. So we're going to fill in every second one with a primary colour. So I've got red in there, and then we're going to do blue. So leave a space and then fill in the blue, leave a space, then fill in the yellow. So we'll have every second triangle with a primary colour in it. And then we're going to blend the colours to create the secondary colours. So then we're going to make purple, we'll make green, and we'll make orange, okay, with those 3 primaries. So if you want to grab your red one, then we'll start with 1 triangle and just fill in one of those triangles with your beautiful red. Now, when you're doing it, if you've got a short little piece of pastel, you might want to light the whole thing down on your paper. Or if you have a longer stick like I've got, then you might draw with it like this and just literally fill in that 1 triangle. Okay, so just colour it in as you would with a pencil or anything else. When we've coloured the whole thing in, we're going to blend it in with your fingers. So pastels are very dirty. And the lovely thing about them is that you don't need any other equipment. There are other things you can use like blenders and so forth, but basically you don't need anything else. Like, you know, normally other mediums you might need brushes or water and solvents and all that sort of thing. So I love pastels because they're immediate. You don't need anything else to use them other than your fingers. So it's a lot of fun, but it does get a bit dirty. So I have little towels like this one. So that's just a little old hand towel that I've torn up, and I use that to wipe my hands on. It is a good idea if you do have a towel to wet one end of it so that you can actually wipe your fingers clean and then dry them off on the other end, and that will keep it nice. You keep your fingers nice and clean in between colours, because if you've been touching black, you don't want to pick up white because then it'll just make it grey, you know. So if you're trying to keep your colours nice and pure, then you want to try and keep your fingers reasonably clean in between colours. All right, so there we go. I've got the red coloured in there. Just going to fix this lighting. That's a bit better. Okay, and you can see it's kind of blotchy, isn't it? It doesn't really fill it up on the first layer. So pastels are all about layering. We can put colour over colour over colour and build up colour that way. It's quite beautiful. So once you've coloured that in, just pick a finger, any finger, and give it a little rub. And you'll find if you're on a dark paper, it'll go darker because it kind of shows cut through the colour of the paper underneath. Okay, so just push that in. And if you're on sanded paper, you'll find that it feels a bit scratchy on your finger. And you can actually end up with quite sore fingers after doing a lot of this. So just rub that in nicely like that. Okay. And you'll find you'll get a lovely red finger like I've got. And you can wipe that off on your little towel or whatever you've got there. Paper towel is also really good. And I just saw Louise blowing it. It's okay. Yeah. It's better if you don't, only because it's going to get everywhere. Like it's really dirty. And you know, I keep doing it too. I can't help myself. I just want to blow all that dust away because it's in the way. And it's what we did in school, isn't it? When you rub something out, you always blew it. Yeah. So it's normal to do that, but it's better if you can avoid doing it because it just ends up all over your house, ends up everywhere, in your carpet, on your desk, all over the place. And it's dirty. So when you do find your dust builds up on your page, if you're working flat like I am, just bang it onto the cloth or whatever you've got there on the table. I have an extra cloth on the other side there, and I just literally bang my board onto the cloth and the dust kind of just falls off. It will sort of still stick a little bit onto your paper, but you can clean that up later with an eraser. All right, so we've blended in one layer. Cool. Now we're going to do it again. So grab your red again and fill it all in again, and you'll find it'll get brighter now because we've got one layer of red down, and if we put more over it, then it gets nice and vibrant. So this is a lovely way of making your colours stronger and brighter and richer just by layering them. Okay. And you've probably found you're getting a bit more dust on there now. So if that's happening, again, just tip it off onto your cloth, a paper towel, whatever you've got that's there that you can shake later or wash or throw in the bin. Okay. Once you've coloured that in again, then give it another little blend with your fingers. Right? So you can just start to rub that in with your finger. Don't worry about the edges. You find your edges are going to get a bit blurry and messy. Pastels are a bit blurry like that. It's difficult to get really hard, sharp edges with your pastels, which is when you need to use pastel pencil or pastels that have a very sharp edge on them. If you're trying to get fine lines, which is not impossible, you can do it, but don't stress if you're going outside the lines a little bit. Okay, so that's 2 layers now of red. See how much more vibrant and lush that looks. So it's what's nice about the pastels is you can start to do glazing, which is a term they use for oil paint. So if you've ever done oil painting, you can actually build up your layers with the thin. You start off with thin layers of colour, and then you build it up. And as you build it up, you get thicker and thicker. And so then you create this really rich, beautiful, lush colour or blends. Now, if you wanted to, if you're feeling like you want to brighten that up even more, you can bang more over the top again. So see how this paper, or most papers, will take quite a few layers of pastel. So see how I'm putting that on again now. See how much brighter it's getting? Once more. So by doing that, it's getting brighter and brighter. And this time, we're not going to blend it in with our fingers. We're going to leave it sitting on the surface, because that's when you get that beautiful colour to sing right on the top there. And so then you can kind of see through it almost. You can see through it to the first and second layers. So you've got that beautiful darker kind of red or colour underneath, and then the brighter colour sitting on the surface like that. And that's when it also picks up the texture of your paper. So if you're working on paper that's got a few little bumps or patterns in it, this is like a chicken wire kind of pattern, then you'll find that you'll see that texture, which is beautiful, I think. I think that's what's one of the loveliest things about pastels, is that you can get a beautiful textured effect based on the different papers that you use. Okay. All right. Now we're going to colour in a blue one next. So if you pick up your blue, all right, we're going to leave a gap. So leave one of your pie pieces empty, and we'll come in and do this one here. All right. So I'm just going to put my blue on there. Do the same kind of thing this time. So we're just going to put down one layer of blue, and you don't have to press very hard, because we know, you can come back and put 2 or 3 more layers back over the top of that. So you don't have to get it lush and thick first go round. And if you've got this kind of blue, you'll find it, maybe it feels a little bit softer, the blue one. For some reason, that pigment or that colour is often a bit creamier than your reds and yellows. So it might be going on a little bit easier. You might feel like it's a bit thicker or a bit creamier. So you can see on there, I've just done the one layer, and you can see the texture of the paper showing through there. Now, technically in your art, you could leave that there. If you really like the look of that, then you can leave it. And that's where coloured paper is great, because you can actually use the paper colour in your art. if you want to do that. Okay, so that's one layer of blue, and then grab a finger, any finger, and if you have a red finger, you might want to wipe it, otherwise you're going to make purple. Or use a different one, and then just blend in your blue, and you might find that'll blend in a little bit easier than the red for some reason. I don't know why, but it seems to be softer. The blue's always a bit softer, and so that blends in quite nicely. So you just kind of push your finger around. When I'm blending like this, I tend not to lift my finger off the paper. I kind of try and leave it on there, because that helps to give me a nice continuous, even sort of blend, rather than if you keep picking up your finger and doing this, you're going to get uneven blending. But if you keep your finger on there and just rub it around, it'll keep that nice and smooth and even. So mine's looking pretty well covered just on one layer. And as I said, it just depends on your kinds of pastels, but I'm going to bang another layer over the top anyway, just because I can. And I like the lush, rich thickness of that. So you can see it's looking much bluer. Well, you can't really see it that well, can you? I'll have another go at the iPad in a minute. All right, so that's lovely and lush. And if you're on the sanded paper, you'll notice it's probably sounding a bit scratchy too. Sometimes it gets a bit noisy and sounds a bit scratchy. Okay, now you can either, depending on the blue you've used and how you're feeling about that, you can either blend that in again too, or just leave it sitting on the top. So different colors require different amounts of pastel to do the same kind of thing. It just depends. It also depends on the brand that you've used. So if you've invested in some good quality pastels, then you'll find that you only need 1 or 2 layers. If you've got cheaper pastels, yeah, that they tend not to hang on to the paper so well, and they can kind of feel a bit chalky and dry, and you feel like you never get enough on there. So it just depends on what brand you've got. So the ones I've recommended in your list are the best ones, I think. Try to avoid things like your $2 shops and that sort of stuff, or your student grade stuff, because it just doesn't have the gripping power of the good quality pastels. So you really do need to use the good stuff, otherwise you won't be happy with the outcome at all. All right, so we've all got blue in there, red and blue. Beautiful. Okay, let's go for yellow. So we're picking up the lightest color now, so you want to try and make sure your fingers are fairly clean. Otherwise, we're going to contaminate the yellow and make that all grubby. All right, so here's my yellow. Leave another gap, so we're going to go into this triangle now. And you'll find because the color's lighter, it's going to be a bit more work to fill in that black, okay? Because light on dark is always a bit more challenging than doing dark on dark or mid. So I've got a short stumpy piece, so I'm just going to lie it down flat on my paper like that, okay, and rub it around. If you've got long sticks of pastels, you might need to break them, because using shorter pieces like this is a lot easier. You get a wider coverage, and it's just nicer when you're filling in a big area to have a shorter piece that you can just run around on the paper without using the tip. The tip is good, but it's more like a drawing than a filling, if you know what I mean. So most of my pastels, if I've bought long sticks, end up getting broken because I need to shorten them off a little bit. Okay, so there's our yellow one. Now we're going to push that in as well. So same procedure. Make sure you've got a clean finger and rub that in to your paper. And you'll find it'll go darker because we're on a darker paper. And then you might want to put some more over the top again. Don't worry about going outside the lines. You can't be too precise with pastels. You can't be, if you're a person who's very precise and tidy and likes to do intricate works, then you might get a little bit frustrated with pastels. So Once you've rubbed that in with your finger, then you can pop another layer over. You might need 2 or 3 layers of yellow to make it really, really bright. I find when I'm working on dark paper, if I have to do something light, like a bright light flower or something, I will tend to put maybe a white or something down underneath it, and that'll help to keep it nice and bright. So that's 2 layers of yellow on there. Blend that in again. Now, you might notice, just have a try of this. If you press quite hard when you're blending, so I'm just going to show you. If I press hard with my finger, just keep pushing, 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 pushing in the same place. See how it goes darker? It's gone darker there where I've just kept rubbing. So the harder you press, the darker it'll go because we're on the dark paper. Or you can just press very lightly. You can just rub your finger over that gently, gently, and kind of leave some of it on the surface and push some of it in. So it just depends on what effect you want to have. I'm going to bang another layer of yellow over that just to keep it nice and lush and bright. And I won't blend in the last layer. So that's the other secret, is you don't need to keep blending all the time. Once you've got your background of something in or your basics down, you can just put colour over the top and let it sit there. So resist the temptation to keep blending all the time, because that's when you start to make mud, and that's when things get messy. So there comes a time when you don't want to blend anymore and just let that beautiful bright pigment sit on the surface and shine. Gorgeous. Alrighty, so now we're going to blend some secondary colours. These are our primaries. So every colour in the rainbow and in your palette is made up of these colours, okay? So it's a very good rule of thumb to get your head around, because you know you can make any colour out of these ones. Absolutely any. Even black, or nearly black. Not white though, but white's not a colour, is it? Apparently. Anyway, I don't know. Don't understand all that too much. So we're going to make our secondary colours. And to do that, we're going to mix the 2 colours. So for instance, this blank spot here will become a mix of red and yellow. Okay, so that'll then become orange. So we're going to blend that with that to make that. So let's put down yellow first. It doesn't matter which one you put in first, but let's try yellow. So put down 1 layer of yellow in that little section there. Okay, just put it down lightly. You don't have to press very hard. You can see on mine the texture of the paper is showing through. So I haven't put down too much. I'm not going to blend it. We're just going to put yellow on first. Don't blend yet. Okay. Once you've got a light layer of yellow, pick up your red. And we're going to do the same thing. We're just going to very lightly run red over the top of that. So this is where the fun begins, because you can actually make amazing colours and tones and all sorts of beautiful effects by putting 2 colours or more together on your paper. So, you know, when you're doing acrylic paint or something, you'll mix your colours in your palette first and then you put it on. Well, this is all mixed on the paper. It's kind of cool. It's very cool. And if you muck it up, it's okay. You just take it off. So it's easy to get off. So once you've got your yellow and your red on there, we're just going to blend those in with your fingers. And that's when the magic happens, because you just start to push that around and create this beautiful orange. Okay. Now mine's gone a bit kind of dark because we're on dark paper, but I like the dark because it makes the colours pop. So now you can kind of have a bit of a play and think, well, maybe I want to lighten that up a little bit. Let's pop a bit more yellow over the top of that again. So I can sweep a little bit of yellow back over that. And then I can sweep a bit of red over that again. So you can actually keep sort of adding some layers of colour until you get the orange that you want, right? So if you want a brighter, lighter sort of orange, then you'll add a bit more yellow. And if you want a deeper, richer orange, you can add more red. And you don't have to blend in between each layer. You can actually just put the colour over the top without pushing it in with your fingers too much. Now I've got 4 layers of colour on there now. I've got 2 of yellow and 2 of red. So now I'm just going to push that in and see what happens. And you'll find it'll go a bit darker because we're on darker paper. You're making this beautiful orange. How lovely is that? Look at that. Nice. And then if I want to brighten that up a bit more, I can add more red. So you can kind of keep going with your layering and your colours to create different tones of orange. Yeah? Coolio. All right, let's try green now. So we're going to mix your blue and your yellow in this triangle here to make our secondary colour, which is green. So let's put down, I'm going to try blue first. So just a light covering of blue. I always like to start off nice and light when I'm doing this kind of work and build it up. Rather than going in and pressing really hard at first, I just like to go gently and let a little bit of colour sit on the surface like that. Okay, so just a nice light little shade of blue. And then I'm going to come over that with my yellow. Now, you might know, if you've just used yellow to make orange, you'll have a bit of red stuck on it like that. Yeah, because pastels pick up colour from each other. So you need to wipe that clean on your towel or your paper towel. Now it's nice and clean. All right, so I can go in now with nice clean yellow. And I know I'm not going to put red in there and make a mess unless you want to. And then just sweeping over that with my yellow. I really like making green. It's so fun. Beautiful. Okay. And then once you've got a little bit of yellow over your blue, find a clean finger again and just push that in. Okay. And so again, you might find that's a bit too dark or too blue or too something. So then you can just fiddle around with your yellows and your blues until you get the green that you're looking for. If you want a nice limey green, then you would add a bit more yellow. Now, all of this comes in very handy when you're doing landscapes with hills and things like that, because there's so many different greens out there that, you know, you might want to have a brighter kind of sunshiny grass area, and then that's when you'll add a bit more yellow. If you want it in more shade or a cooler kind of green, that's when you'll add more blue. Okay. So that's kind of a mid-green that I've made there. It's quite cool. It's still got a fair bit of blue in it, but I can brighten that up with more yellow if I want to. So don't be afraid to just play around and see what happens. You could do half and half. You could put extra yellow on one half to get that lovely limey green. And then you could put a bit of blue on the other bit to make it a cooler green. So putting in some blue on the bottom bit there, and then you can kind of,
Jeanne,
yeah.
is there a limit to the number of layers that you can do? Like how many?
Yeah, it depends on the paper and the pastels. So if your pastels are drier, and again, depending on the paper, you can probably get, I reckon, 6 or 7 layers at the most.
Yep. Okay, great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, no worries. And again, depending on the pastel. So this schminky one, which is really creamy, sometimes you can only get 2 or 3 layers of that on because it's so thick and it fills up the tooth of the paper. So the tooth in the paper is what the texture is, and it'll fill up really quickly. Whereas the art spectrums, I find I can get 6 or 7 layers on. The other cool thing is, if you get to the point where you've got lots of layers on and you want to add more and it won't stick, because it will get to a point where the pastels just won't stick anymore because there's too much on there. you can get a fixative spray. So if you've heard of just a fixative for pastels or charcoal, it's just I think it's about $13 for a tin. They spray it over that and it kind of sets it. And then you can add more pastel over the top once it's dry, which doesn't take long, it takes 5 or 10 minutes. So that's a great way also of building up your layers. So I find if I'm doing something that needs like touches of white or sunshine or something really bright at the end, like petals on a flower or whatever, and I can't get the white to stick anymore because it shows the other colours through sometimes underneath. And so that's when I'll give it a spray of fixative. And then I can bang those brights on and they stay beautifully. So yeah, the fixative is great, but I try not to use it too much because the downfall of that is it will darken your darks. So if you've got, see that one there, I can't find where to point with my finger, that big one there. So that's a lot of dark colour. And when I wanted to hit it with the lights, so the really bright lights on the edges of the leaves. Bring it over so you can see. I just finished this the other day, so I'm really happy with it. But see those leaves where I wanted to add the beautiful bits of bright, just on the very edges, I gave it a spray with fixative and set everything basically underneath, but it did darken off all the dark areas. But I didn't mind that because then I was going to add the lights and give it that really bright sunshine thing. Yeah. So.
And do you just spray the bits that need to be lightened, or do you spray the whole thing?
You can do either.
Okay.
Yeah. So I pretty much did the whole thing because I had so many, light areas that I wanted to just touch. And I used a schminky pastel to do the lights because it's so creamy and it's beautiful and bright. Yeah, so things like that you can spray and then put your lights on at the end. Yeah, fixative is great for that. So, and they also recommend that you should, framers like you to use a fixative or something on the end of your painting, because when they're framing it, as you've seen today, you get quite a lot of dust fall. And so they're not fond of framing pastels because they are so dirty and so dusty. However, I don't like to spray them at the end because you lose all your brights. If I'd sprayed that now, it would just, all the brights would go really dull and then I'd have to put it on again. So that's the only downfall with the fixative. Yeah. Yeah. But it does allow you to add more layers, which is awesome. Okay, so back to this. So there's our green. See how I've put a bit more blue on this end and a bit more yellow on that end. So that's how you can kind of adjust the colours that you create, so it's fun to play. Now we're going to make purple. So we're going to put red and blue into this bit here and make purple. All right, so it doesn't matter whether you put red down or blue first, up to you. I'm just going to put a light layer of blue first. And again, letting some of the texture of the paper show through. So, that effect is really beautiful if you're doing things like bricks or stone work or, something that's got lovely texture to it. It's very nice. Make sure you wipe your pastels off. You don't want to put yellow into your purple here because that'll make mud. Mud is browns or greys. And browns and greys are glorious for your shadows and for lots of lovely things. But when you want bright, pure colours like this, you don't want greys. Okay, so I'm banging a bit of red over that. Now, because my red is a little bit harder than my blue, it's sort of not going on quite as softly. And now I've got my two colours on there, so you can push that in with your fingers. And you'll find it'll probably go quite dark. Okay. So that's a beautiful, rich purple. Yum, yum. I love purple. Purple's beautiful for shadows, to put it, you know, under your trees and things if you're doing a landscape, or into your flowers for lovely shadows. So once you've done that, and you can keep layering over the top if you want to change that a little bit or thicken it up and make it brighter. So you can add more blue again, or you can add more red. It's just lovely because you can just keep sort of playing with it until you find the colour that you like. Okay, so push that around. Beautiful. Those rich magenta kind of colours. Glorious they are. And so now we've made a colour wheel, which is really cool. And the rule of thumb is for complementary colours is that the complementaries sit opposite each other on your colour wheel. So if you're painting something in lots of blues and you want to, you kind of want to figure out what colour palette you're going to use. So what colour goes with blue? That would be beautiful. And you can look at your colour wheel and you can see that it's orange because they're opposite. Okay, so your blue and orange are opposite each other. So that's your complementary blend. Your purple and yellow are complementary, and your red and green are complementary. So it's a really nice little formula to help you choosing colours and creating artworks. Imagine, you know, you're doing beautiful landscapes and using lots of greens. And if you want to create some shadow and contrast or complementary colours, then throw a bit of red in there. Red inside green is beautiful. It gives you some gorgeous shadows and lovely warmth. All right. And same with your purples and your yellows. Imagine, you know, beautiful purple flowers with a touch of yellow in there. It's just such a nice combination of colours. So
may I ask something?
Yes.
This purple of mine isn't turning out purple.
It's very dark, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, very dark.
How would I make it more purpley?
More purpley.
Was that in the case of you just need to lighten it up more?
Yeah, you could try a little bit of white. Not too much though, because white makes things milky.
Oh, okay.
What would yellow do? Oh no, yellow will go brown. Don't do that. Yellow will make it go brown. It just, I don't know, keep adding your blues and maybe.
Is it that I've got, but do you think it's too much blue or too much red or something, or like
probably
one other is
probably because they're both dark tones, and so it's creating a dark purple.
Yeah. Okay.
So if you wanted to lighten that, try a light blue. Have you got a light blue handy?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah, maybe put that on. I think that will make it more violet.
Have a look. Thank you.
Does that work?
Second, I'll give it a little rub in.
All righty.
It's kind of browny more than purpley.
Oh, okay. Yeah, interesting. Interesting. Yeah.
Okay. Is it just the particular blue and the particular using? Okay.
Yeah. Maybe the red has too much yellow in it. You know, different reds have different amounts of blue and yellow in them. So maybe the red you're using has a bit of yellow in it that might be making it a bit muddier.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, so it just depends on the kind of red and the kind of blue that you're using. But you could fiddle around with that, I think. Maybe even a bit of a pink or something. You've got a bit of pink there, which is obviously red with a touch of white. That might lighten it up too.
No worries. I was just surprised to see that mine does not look like the same kind of purple that yours does. That's all.
Yeah. It'll be because of the brand or the pigment or the paper. Okay. There's all different, things that it could be affecting it. Yeah.
The pink seems to be doing something.
Does it?
Yeah, it does.
Cool.
Okay, cool. I'll show you in a second, then I'll unmute myself.
That's all right. This is good. I like that you're
No,
asking.
actually, it's still muddy. It's still
Yeah,
very
it's still
bright.
muddy. It's lovely and rich though, isn't it? I like that. It's a really deep, beautiful purple. Yeah, nice.
Okay, cool.
You have to
Thank
keep
you.
playing with different colours and yeah, mucking around. And sometimes, often, not sometimes, that actually happens when you are doing, you know, artwork and you're thinking, oh, I'll put a bit of that on there and do that. And you just end up with these dark, muddy sort of colours. And that's when you get a little bit frustrated because, you know, you want those beautiful brights and it's just not happening for you. And so it's really just a matter of trial and error. You've just got to keep adding colour or take it off. Do I have my little brush? You know, those stumpy little hard brushes that you can get? I think we used them for some sort of stamping years ago. I forget what they're called now. But you can actually brush your pastel off your paper with a stiff brush, okay, if you want to remove it. The other option you can do is use the kneadable eraser. So that's the little grey one that I had on your list to get. So these are fabulous, right? So that's a new one, unused, unopened. And then this is a used one. So they end up looking pretty grubby. But what you can do is you can pull pieces off of that, right? So you can pull pieces off. It's like a blue tack. And what it does is it picks up the pastel off your paper. So see here, I've got my dust fall that sort of, it got trapped on the paper. Because the paper has texture, it will kind of catch all the loose dust. And if you don't want that, if you want to clean it up, you can use your kneadable eraser, right? But don't rub it, sort of dab it instead of rubbing it. And that actually just kind of picks up all the dust and the excess stuff on there. And that applies to when you want to remove something in your artwork. So for instance, if you think your purple's too dark, you can actually go in there and dab it. See, I've dabbed it and it puts it onto the eraser like that. So then you've got to knead it and find a clean side. So you just keep kind of massaging your eraser and kneading it so that it kind of pushes all that pigment into it. You find a clean side and you can dab it again. So it's a bit of a slow process, but it doesn't damage the paper. It removes the pigment fairly well, as long as it's not pushed in too hard. If it's pushed in really hard, it's pretty hard to get off. Again, depending on the paper that you use. But if it's just loose dust like that that's lying there and you want to clean up around the edges, these kneadable erasers are your best friend. Okay. Most other erasers will erase the paper, so they'll actually take the paper off, but these don't. These just pick up the pigment, and they're great for charcoal as well. Fabulous for charcoal. So if you do any charcoal work and you want to erase your charcoal, these kneadables are fabulous. And they last for ages. So, you know, you can use that quite a lot before it gets dirty black and won't work anymore. And then you just throw them out and get another one. They're about $2 each. So I usually have a couple of spares lying around. So that's a great way to clean up your paper and take bits and pieces off. If you want to tidy up your edges, so if you wanted to sharpen up those little messy edges, like here, you could just use your kneadable eraser and just clean it up around the edge like that. And it just takes that excess off the surface. It's also really good for blending. So if you want to blend your colours, for instance, I maybe want to blend these two here, then you can kind of just use it to push your colour around. Bit of fun. So I've just messed up my colour wheel, but you can actually blend those edges together if you wanted to and just sort of merge them together and create this lovely flow from orange to yellow, you know. And again, that's a nice way to practice the pressure of your fingers too. So sometimes you want to press really heavy. Sometimes you just want to go very light. So I can do the same on this side. I can actually merge my orange and red and just gently, 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 not too hard, push those together and create a beautiful blend from one to the other. So there's not a hard line between the two. See? And you'll find, you know, whether you need to press a little bit harder or just very softly. I always start off soft and just go in harder if I need to. So when you're blending pastels, it's all about the pressure you apply as well and how hard you push. Okay. Now, the other groovy thing we can do is make, if you want to, just have a try at this, make those secondary colours again down the bottom here. So if you've got any space on the bottom of your page or either side of your colour wheel, let's make green again. So you can have a little play down there, mix another little green that you might like. So something like this. Okay, make a green. Now, have you got white handy? If you've got a little white stick of pastel there, I just want to show you what white will do. So if you put a bit of white on one end, like that, and then blend them together, and you can see how white will change that green. And it'll kind of just lighten it all up and make it a really pale, beautiful, like a sage green, which is quite lovely. So this is where your whites and your darks can come in very handy to change the tone of your colour. I can come back with more blue and yellow and brighten that up a little bit more if you want to, and then just gently pull it down. So see, by pulling the colours together like this, we're merging them together. So you're creating a lovely little blend from mid-green to light. And you can do that with the other colours as well. So if you want to make an orange here, so maybe a bit of yellow and some red to make a new orange down here. You can add a bit of dark in if you want to. See what happens if you put a bit of black or purple in there. It's beautiful. So there's a little orange. It's not very bright. But if I add white to my orange, I'm going to make apricots. Beautiful, soft, lovely apricots. So that's another lovely little combination of light colours that you can create. And then you can do the same with purple. So purples should go sort of pinkish or violet when we add white. So I'll make another purple with my red and blue. Blend that in. Oh, had a dirty finger then, so now I've got orange in there. So that's a purple. Add a bit of white. And then push them together. So that's when you get these beautiful violets. They can go a little muddy sometimes too. But those muddy colours are really nice for your shadows and your beautiful tones and things. When you're trying to get things to look 3D and you want one side to be darker than the other or lighter, then you can really have a lovely play with all these whites and colours. So, you know, that's a fun thing to do, and just have a bit of a fiddle. If you want to make mud, so for instance, my purple, if I wanted to make that, mix that with your complementary colour, so purple with your yellow, okay, makes the most beautiful browny, dirty, muddy colours. They're lovely for earthy kinds of tones. Bring them a bit closer. Add a bit more blue and red. So don't be afraid to mix your colours and just have a play. And see what you can create. See all those beautiful browns there? Yeah, beautiful colours, aren't they? They're gorgeous for shadows and oh, just glorious. Yum, yum. So I don't know if you can tell, but I really love pastels. It's my favourite medium. The other thing that's really great about them too is, you know, if you are working on something, you can just walk away and leave it and come back tomorrow and carry on. There's no drying, no waiting, no, you know, nothing. You don't have to wait for anything, which is really nice. you know, with oil paints, they take a long time to dry. So sometimes the painting will take you weeks and weeks and weeks, and you've got to do one bit each day and then wait for it to dry. That would drive me crazy. I can't wait. I just want to do it now. So that's our little colour wheel. So you can pop that into a plastic sleeve or something and keep that for your reference. And then when you want to think about colour, you know, combinations, you can grab that out and have a look at it and go, oh yeah, okay, complementaries to green is red. So I can use that, and that'll make beautiful muddy colours and shadows and lovely, lovely complementary blends. Gorgeous. So that's part one of today's class. And what we might do now is have a little 5-minute break, if that's okay. Go grab a water or a cuppa, yeah? And then we'll come back in 5 and we'll get on with it. And hopefully my iPad might decide to work by then. If not, I'm going to be a contortionist and do a pear, just like we did a colour wheel. All right. So I shall see you soon. And no worries. Yeah, pleasure. And we'll be back in 5. So it's 10:10. So I'll see you at 15:15. Groovy. Welcome back. Welcome back. Now, I just plugged the iPad and everything in, so hopefully it's all going to work. Yes, I did do a test run. It worked 2 seconds ago, so it should do it again with any luck. All right. So part 2 today is all about painting this pear, and you'll have the reference image. So either have that up on your iPad or a phone or another screen, or just print out the pear off your notes there. Lovely. So that's what we're going to be painting today. And we're going to do this in complementary colours. So we just spoke about those on the colour wheel. So we're going to be using purple and yellow, because purple is beautiful in the shadows, and yellow is kind of a peary colour anyway, really, isn't it? Green or yellow. So we're going to go with the yellow pear today. Now, the paper that I have chosen or grabbed for today's class is this colour. So it's like a pinky, beigey kind of colour. Something mid-tone would be great. Not black, because we want to put some shadows in there and they won't come out on the black. So something in a mid, like a blue or a grey or a pinky colour or a light purple. I think the purple one is called elephant or aubergine or something like that. So any colour that's not too black would be fine. And, you know, white is okay. Yellow might not be too bright on the white, but it doesn't really matter. This is just a little practice piece, and we're just going to have a play with our complementary colours and have a practice at doing something in 3D. So let's do that. So I'm going to now I'm going to share my screen so that you can see my table, and you don't have to look at my mug for the rest of the class. So let's see how we go. All right. Cable, share. See what happens. I'm just going to press. Oh, it worked. Hooray! We're in. Okay, so this is my table. What I have on here is a cloth. So the cloth is good because it just catches all the loose pastel dust. You can see a little bit here from our last exercise. Means I can take it outside later and shake it off or give it a wash, and it's good to go. Right, so I might just pop a bit of light on there for you to see. So this is my paper and this is my board. So I'm going to tape it down again, just like we did last time, just on the corners. If you are doing a painting where you want to have a nice little frame around the edges, then you can always tape all the way around the edge just to keep it clean, because the pastels will sort of spread out a little bit, and they do tend to get everywhere. So if you want to try and keep your page nice and clean around the edges, that's a really good idea. The only thing I say is just be careful, because it can tear when you take the tape off, especially if it's been on there for a little while, like a day or a week, and you take the tape off the edges, it can tear because this is just paper. So when you do pull it off, try to pull it off away from the paper, so in the other direction. And also when you're putting the tape on initially, just stick it down onto your clothing or something, some sort of fabric first, just to get some of that stickiness off before you put it onto your paper. And then that should stop it from tearing. There's nothing worse than having done a beautiful painting and then you take off the tape and it rips it. It's quite heartbreaking. So here's our paper. We're on a board. It's all taped down, so I don't have to hold on to it. It's going to stay nice and still. Having it on a board means that I've got a nice hard background that's nice and smooth as well. Got my notes, got my pear. So what we're going to do is literally just draw the shape of a pear onto this page. And we'll probably want to make it reasonably big. We may as well use up all the paper. If you don't want to, you can go smaller, but I like to try and work big. It's actually easier with pastels to work larger because they're such big chunky sticks. It's easier to work bigger than it is to work small. So this is my little collection of pastels for today. When I'm doing a painting, I like to have a container of the pastels that I'm using for that particular painting. That way it's not going to get mixed up with all my other ones. And then I know what colours I've already used in the painting. If you are just picking up colour out of your big collection and then putting it back, and you might not have a big collection yet, but one day when you do, you don't want to be putting them back in and then picking up another one, because when you come back tomorrow, you're going to think, oh, which green was that? If you've got 50 greens like I do. So it's easier just to keep them nice and tidy in a little container like this. Paper towel is good too, because you can do this and wipe them and get them a little bit cleaner before you carry on. So the colours we're going to use for the pear are yellow, okay, and purple. And we'll add a bit of white at the end. And we might add a bit of black as well. And you'll want a pencil to draw with. Okay, the blue and the red we probably don't need, so I'll pop those aside for now. But you never know, so we'll just keep them handy in case. All right, so this is my blue tape too. I think I showed you that earlier. Anyway, we don't need to see that anymore. And what else? I think that's it. So what we want to do is draw up the shape of the pear. So when you're looking at a reference photo, you just kind of want to think about, you know, what's here? What am I looking at here? So we all know what a pear looks like. It has a basic shape. It's kind of rounder at the bottom. It tapers up into a thinner, rounder top. We've got a lovely thick stem on there. And then we've got shadow. See the shadow here coming off around the base there. So you want to leave some space to put the shadow in, which is why we want a medium coloured paper, not anything too dark, because a dark paper won't show the shadow. And then we want to look at where the pear is placed within this particular picture. So we're going to have it slightly over to the left. See how we've got a little bit less space on the left side and a bit more on the right. And that's to allow for the shadow. So I want to do it slightly off center, which is always a good idea when you're doing a painting. If you have a main subject, you're better to have it slightly off center than bang in the middle, usually. Although when you know the rules, you can break them, right? That's how it goes. All right, so let's draw a pear. Now, it doesn't have to be perfect. Don't worry if it isn't. This is your pear, and it's really just an exercise in mixing colors. All right, so I'm just going to draw my pear like this. Beautiful round bottom. Okay, I've left a little bit extra space on the right, not a lot. Now, if you get it wrong, if it's in the wrong spot or you want to rub something out, just get that trusty kneadable eraser and then you can rub it out and start again. So as I said before, the kneadable erasers don't harm your paper. They just take the pigment off the surface. So you can redraw that. So I like to make my pears slightly wonky. They're not always perfectly shaped or even. So I'm doing it just a little bit harder so you can see that on the screen. I could use charcoal. So the other great thing you can use with pastels is charcoal. So if you want to draw something up and you want something darker, then a charcoal is a great option. It comes off really easily and it plays nicely with pastel. Okay, what doesn't play with pastel is graphite or lead pencil. So don't ever use a lead or a graphite pencil with pastel. If you do your drawing in a lead or graphite pencil, put your pastel over the top, you'll always see that shiny silver mark. You can't get rid of it for some reason. So try not to use that because it just won't rub off, it won't go away. So either charcoal pencil or pastel pencil. Have I got a pastel pencil handy? No, I have got a whole set over there. But yes, you can get pastel pencils in all your different colours, but I really like my charcoal pencils or sticks for drawing. They're great. And you can still use them in your artwork. So when you want to add a bit of white, a charcoal white pencil is glorious for that. So very handy tools to have. All right, so we've got our little bit of a pear shape happening there. You might want to add just, a shape for your stem as well. So as I said, don't get too caught up in being too precise with this. It's really just an exercise in mixing colours. Okay, and we'll put the shadow in later on. That's the fun part. When you put in the shadows and the highlights, I find that's the most joyful moment. It's the kind of the reward for all the work you've done. All right, so this little pear is dark on the right side. So it's kind of got this darker, shadowy sort of shape like this. And then we've got the lighter side on the left. So obviously the light is coming from the left, yeah? And it's hitting here. We've got a nice little shine there. And there's a slight shine there. And then the rest is kind of all yellow. And then we're going to use purple to put that shadow or that beautiful dark in there. And then we've got the little shadow under here. So this is why charcoal is lovely, because I can just sketch around with this and then I know I can get it off really easily later on. Okay, so when you break that down into parts like that, so this is the darker part, this is the mid yellow, this is going to be the light. The stem is obviously darker, so we can use a combination of the purple and yellow to make a brown kind of colour in there, which is fun. And then we'll use purple for the shadows, and we might use a bit of black just to give it some punch at the end. So I always like to put my mid or my darks down first. So we're going to start with the yellow because that's the main colour of the pear. You can see my yellow is a bit grubby because it's been running around with blue. Just give it a wipe, give it a clean. So when you want to make your colours nice and pure, just try to give them a little clean so that they're nice and clean again. All right, and then I'm going to lie that down flat on my paper. So it's a short piece. It used to be a long stick, similar to the size of my red one there, but I break them. So I know that's heartbreaking when you're paying for these beautiful pastels, but it's much easier to use when you've got a short piece and then you can just kind of wipe it over your paper. So we're going to basically fill in the whole thing. Let's just colour in the whole thing with yellow because we're going to be blending later. So see how by using it on its side like that, I'm getting a nice wide strip of colour that will go down quickly, easily, and running that around to fill in my pear. Okay, like that. Beautiful. I know I've got a dark outline, but I can sort of go over that and push it in a little bit. So that's one layer of yellow on my paper. Okay. So now I've got one layer on there. I'm going to push that in with my fingers. I just want to blend this in. This is different paper this time. It's probably the same as what you've got because it's what I've said to get on the list. So this is the Colour Fix and it kind of hangs onto the pastel really well. Okay, so I'm just pushing that in and I'm kind of running from top to bottom. I'm just doing these top to bottom kind of strokes with my finger, pushing that pastel in, coming down the bottom and around the base there. So now we've got that sort of filling up the tooth. So if you imagine a comb and all the little teeth on a comb, so imagine now the paper has teeth on it. They're tiny little bumps like sandpaper, but we call that tooth because the pastel kind of goes down in between all the little bits of tooth and hangs onto it nice and tight. Okay, so I've rubbed in my yellow. Now I've got a lot of dust sitting around the outside. You can see just around here. So I'm going to wipe my finger and I've got my cloth. I'm going to take those off there first. Got my little cloth on the side here. So I'm just going to pick this up and tap it so that that excess dust falls off onto the cloth. Try not to blow it, only because it's bad for your cleaning. Gets everywhere. All right, lovely. So now we've got the yellow on there. I'm going to put another layer on because I want this to be really rich and lush and delicious. So wipe that over again. And you can see now it's starting to pick up the texture of the paper. So you can kind of see the first layer of yellow looks a little bit darker. And then the second layer is a bit lighter, but it's got this beautiful kind of bumpy look to it because of the paper texture. Okay, filled all that in again. So it doesn't take quite as long second time around. And you know, don't keep putting it on because you're just going to make dust and waste it. So just do one layer like that, tip off your dust. So notice I haven't blended this in. Let's not blend this for now. Tip that off. Okay, so now I've got 2 layers of yellow on there, which is nice and lush and thick, right? And it's very tempting to put your fingers in there and push it around. If you do, and you can if you want to, but if you do, you're going to kind of dull it down again. So it'll lose its brightness. So that's the secret to pastels. When you want the brightness of the pastels to sit on the surface, don't blend it, let it sit on the top. So I like to start off my paintings by blending in the color and then building it up and adding over the top of it and not blending. And that creates a really beautiful, bright, vibrant color. So it means that all your colors will sit on the surface and shine. All right, so now what we want to do is start to add some tone. So this is what's going to make this look 3D. At the moment, it's very flat and just, you know, a shape on a bit of paper, really. So you want to grab your purple. Now this is quite a big stick of purple. It's a little bit too chunky, but I'm going to see how I go. I'm reluctant to break it, but I will if I have to. Okay, now see on the side, just move this over so you can see the picture as well. On this side here, we've got our shadow. That's what we talked about earlier. So we want to kind of put some purple in that area there. Okay, so just very lightly though, just go lightly because we can always add more. You can't easily take it off always. So better to go gently and lightly at first. So I'm just going to run down the side with my purple because that's where the dark is. That's where the shadow is. The light's shining on the other side. So that means that this side is in shadow. Okay. So I'm just going to smush a bit of that on there. Don't want too much because we can push it around with your fingers. Okay. All right. So just a little bit on there. I'm going to pop a bit down here on the bottom. See on the bottom there, on the bottom edge and underneath, we've got a bit of a shadow as well. So that's because it's sitting on a surface. Okay, lovely. Now what we want to do is put your purple stick down and very gently blend this in. So there's times when you want to be blending hard and there's times when you want to go soft. So what we're going to do on the outmost edge is where it's darkest. And then as it comes in towards the center, it gets a little bit lighter and it sort of blends in with your yellow. Okay, now remember we can always put more yellow over the top. So if you get too dark, we can pop a bit more on the top. So what we want to do is pull this around like that. And where the purple and the yellow kind of merge together, You just want to press very lightly and gently and try not to take it too far over into the yellow just yet. See how I'm just really softly pushing that in. I'm not pushing too hard. Just want to go nice and light for now. I start light and go heavy later. Yeah. So that's blended that down through there. And then I'm just going to do the same thing down in here. Just going to push this in on the edge. And you can see it's got quite a sharp edge on the bottom there. It's quite dark underneath. So we want to get that nice and sharp if you can. Pushing that around like that. Now you can see all that excess dust sitting on my pear. So I'm going to wipe my fingers off again with my little towel and then tip off the dust back over here onto my dust towel. Okay. So now we're starting to create form. This is going to start to look like it's got form and it's 3D rather than a flat yellow shape. All right. So now I'm just going to start to tidy it up a little bit. So I can see I need to sort of push this around here down the edges, tidy that up, get my fingerprints out of there. That's the only thing with pastels, you do end up with a lot of fingerprints. So you've got to try and kind of blend them in a little bit, make them disappear. And where we meet this dark area coming around into the front of the pear, you just want to kind of gently blend the two together. And so that requires just going between the two colours very lightly with your fingers. So hardly touching, little butterfly touches, wisping through there to get the beautiful shape. See how that's all now starting to come together. It's all starting to look like it's got shadow and form. So this is how you create form. Beautiful. Coming down to the base there. Okay, so that's giving us a lovely shape. Now, if you feel like you need to go a little bit darker, you can grab your purple again, put a bit more on. So we're working in tone here. By tone, I mean light and dark. So I really love working in tone. And when you do that, it doesn't actually matter what colour you use, as long as you've got the right tone. If you need to go darker, you can. You can pick up your purple, pop a bit more of that on, and just looking at the picture of the pear and noticing where it's darkest. So it's darkest down through here. There's a slight shine just on the very edge of the right side there. It's hard to see, but it's got a little bit of a shine, especially here on the bit that's extruding. There's a little bit of light there, so that's reflection off the bench or the table or whatever it's sitting on. And then we've got this beautiful darker kind of tone that comes through here. And then it fades off back into the yellow as it comes around. So I'm going to add a bit more purple in through here. Okay, wipe my fingers again. And then very softly just start to blend that in. Blending. Just doing soft little movements here. As I said earlier, when we were doing the colour wheel, I like to try and keep my finger on the page rather than lifting it off and on all the time, because that then helps to create a lovely continuous blend rather than getting individual fingerprints in there. So even if you just hover very lightly over the paper, try not to lift your fingers all the way off, because it just creates a really nice continuous blend. So see how I've gone a bit darker now through there? So that's giving it a bit more contrast, a bit more drama. Lovely. Okay. So now on the other side, well, first we might go to the shadow on the bottom there. So let's do that bit, and we can use the purple for that as well. So you can see I've drawn here lightly the shape of the shadow. And again, it's darker under the pear, and then as it comes out from the side, it gets lighter. So it kind of bleeds out and gets softer out through here. So when you're putting your pastel down, your purple, just put it fairly heavy around the base there. And then we'll just pull it out with fingers rather than putting it all the way out to the side. So that's the bottom. And very carefully just pushing that out through there. So I'm blending it gently around the base here. I want to push that in, get it nice and dark. So it's going to create a lovely little shadow. Knowing that we can always use a bit of black later on, darken it up some more. And then very gently pushing out with your finger. So trying to use the pastel that's on your finger already to blend that out to the side. Okay. So just like that. And that creates a really nice little shadow. So now it's really starting to take form. Okay. And you can see by blending the purple and the yellow, we've made some really lovely muddy kind of grey colours, which is nice for your shadows. It's quite lovely. Okay. Just going to round that out a little bit more there. Gently pulling that out. You can make this shadow darker if you want to, but I like the way that it kind of fades off to the side like that. That's nice. So you can do all kinds of effects with your pastels. If you've got colour on your fingers like this, you can just gently, you know, just make it very light. If you don't want to use the stick onto the paper, you can always put a bit more on your finger like that and then put it on like that with your finger. The other cool things you can use are blenders. So a couple there. You can get these blenders which have different ends on them. So that one's got a sort of flat end on it. It's a rubber tipped one, and this one's got a different shape, sort of a rounded end on it. Now these are really good too if you want to get into little spots where your fingers won't fit. And you can actually use these like you would your fingers to blend the pastels in. So having a set of those, or even just one, is really handy for getting into the tight spots where you might have chunky fingers and they don't quite fit. So they're a good option too. So little rubber tip blenders. They're not called blenders in the shop. I forget what they are. They've got a weird name. I can't think of it. But if I do, I'll let you know. I should know. I used to work there. Anyway, so I've got a bit more dust on my page now. So I'm going to tip some of that off again. It's funny how some of the dust kind of goes in and some doesn't. So there we go. So we've got that sitting there. This edge has been messed up a little bit now. So I'll just clean that up, tidy that up. When you want to sharpen up your edges with a thick colour, you can just use your pastel like you would a pencil. Use the very edge of it. So this one's got some nice, clean, sharp edges that I can use to get a fairly clean line. Sometimes they don't. Sometimes they get a bit blunt because we use them so much. And you might want a sharp edge. So often you might have to break a pastel to get a nice sharp edge. So for instance, you can see on this yellow one, most of that's sort of rounded because I've used all the sides. Got a little sharp edge there. But if I wanted a tip, that would be a bit harder to find. But you can make it work with practice. All right, so that's our little pear. We've got the shadow going on there, and we've got the shadow on the side of the pear. Before we put the light on, because I like to save the light for last because that's the part that gives you the joy, let's do our stem. So pop a bit of purple onto the stem. Now you could cheat. If you had a brown pastel sitting there, you could pick that up and use it instead. But if you're still keen on mixing colours and making mud, then why not just use the very basic palette that we've chosen for this. Okay, so I've got my stem. Now this is where blenders will come in handy because you can actually get into really skinny little bits like the stem to blend. So if I have a blender like this, I can push the pastel in, right? See how it goes a bit darker? Because I'm pushing it into the paper. If you don't have a blender, just try and do it with your fingers, or don't blend it at all. Just let it sit there and do its own thing. So now I've got my yellow. So I'm going to come back over the top of my purple with the yellow and make a kind of a dirty brown colour, which is quite nice. Okay. And then again, you can either let that sit there, try and push it in with your fingers, or use a little blender just to get the colours to mix a little bit on the paper. But as I said, if you've got a brown one sitting there, you can use that too. So that just makes a bit of a kind of a muddy grey colour. And I can tip off the dust again. And that's my stem. Lovely. All right, so now we want to add the lights. I like to save the light for last because, well, for two reasons. Because it makes my heart happy to see it light up, and it also is good because if you want to put a bright bit on at the end, and you don't want to be blending that in. So it's got to be sort of the last thing that you do. So as I mentioned earlier, we've got two light spots. We've got a couple, probably another one actually. So there's one here, one there, and there's another light spot here, but it's not quite as bright as that white spot. It's a little bit of white mixed in with the yellow around that section there. And then there's a little bit of light down on this right-hand side too, just on that edge. So let's go with the bright white first. So make sure when you pick up your white pastel that it's nice and clean, because they get dirty really quickly. And what we want to do with this is just push it down and lift off. You don't want to blend it or anything. We just want to push it on nice and firm and lift up, okay? Because that'll keep the colour lovely and pure. And do it again if you want it to be a bit wider. Okay, so just do that a couple of times until you get that bright white spot on there. And then moving down, so once you've got that on there, you might find you've got some dust sitting there, but that's okay, but we'll tip that off after. Moving down onto underneath that, we've got, remember I said it's sort of white mixed with the yellow. So what I'm going to do is lie my little bit of white down. So you might want to break it if you've got a long stick. So I'm going to lie it flat on my paper there. And I just want to wipe it, kind of wipe it down here. So do these soft little rubbing movements into the yellow. And what happens then, rather than blending it with your fingers, the pastels are blending together with using the pastel stick. So that's another technique that you can do to get a little bit of a highlight happening through there. So it's quite subtle. It's not quite as bright as that first mark that we did. It's just a very gentle combination of the two. And you can see on my little stick of pastel, it's picked up quite a lot of the yellow pastel. So I can wipe that off if I want to, or I can just stick it back on there, because now I've made like a lemony colour. And that's just sitting down through that section there. So that just is a subtle little shine on that bit. And then we're going to do something similar over here on this right-hand side. So you can see there's light reflecting there off that surface. So I'm just tilting the stick of pastel so that I'm just getting the edge of it to touch on the paper. I don't want the big wide side of it because that's going to be too much. I'm just going to tilt that and gently lighten up. Now that's a bit too light, but that's okay because I can push it in with my fingers in a minute. Okay, so I want to get a bit of light on there. Sometimes you don't notice those little bits of light that shine on the other side because you think that's all shadow, but it often isn't. So if you then you get a clean finger, use this one, and just gently pull that around. So it's still lighter, but not quite as bright as the lightest. So get that lovely little shine through there. And just tidy that up along there. And I've just noticed there's a bit more white down through here too on the bottom left. So again, that'll be reflecting off the table or the surface because it's white. So I'm just going to put a bit of light around there too, and then just gently run your finger across it so that it sort of pushes it in gently. Lovely, lovely. Bit too much. I'm going to go over that with yellow now. So this is the other thing you can do. If you find that you've gone too light or too dark, just come back over with your first colour or your main colour and push that around so that it's light but not too bright. I might do that on the other side as well. That's nice. Lovely. And that's about it then for our pear. I think that's all we need to do really. So we've got our shadow on the right side, and then we've got the shadow on the table which sits underneath the pear. The light's coming from the left, so it's always good to note which area or which direction the light's coming from, and then you can figure out where the shadows and things need to be. Lovely. My edges are a bit messy, so you'll find that your edges do get a bit messy. You get all that little bits of dust sitting there. We can tap that off. Okay, and then just get your eraser and dab it to pick up those extra bits around the edge there and clean up your paper. So keep your edges nice and sharp and clean. And that's a good option. There we go. Beautiful. Now I can erase my arrow because I did that in charcoal. See how easily that came off? Pastel, not so easily. So this is pastel up here, a bit of purple pastel dust that landed there. Harder to get off. It'll come eventually, but it's a bit hard, excuse me, a bit harder to get off. But the charcoal comes off really easy. Beautiful. Once you've done that, get your pencil, sign your name. And then you're done. Happy days. Happy pear days. Just grab a little photo of that, and then I'll switch the screen back over to everyone. Lovely. So what have we, 10:53, this is pretty good. So I'll just stop the share now. Come back over to the main screen. There we go. How's everybody going? I'm going to unmute everybody now. And see how you're going. I'd love to have a look at your pears. Oh, beautiful, Louise. Didn't that turn out nice? Gorgeous. Well done. Love it. Oh, Janelle, that's beautiful. Look at the shine on that one. Yeah, nice. Good work. Good work. You'll have to unmute yourselves.
There we go.
There we go. Karen, gorgeous. Oh, wonderful. You've all done such a nice job.
Yeah, I'm so surprised how quick it was, but it really gives a good effect.
Yeah.
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 It just shows me how much I muck about when I try and get something right.
Oh, look, I do that too, you know. Yeah, I know. You can muck around, but you can do it too much and then it just gets too muddy and yucky and, you know, you can't redeem it. So, yeah.
That's what I do, yeah.
Yeah.
So that was good.
Yeah, lovely, excellent. Oh, well done. Thank you, ladies.
Thank
Did a good
you.
job.
Thank you.
My pleasure. So I'll see you back here tomorrow at 9.
Yes,
Well
lovely.
then.
Look forward to it.
What are we doing tomorrow? Clouds.
Clouds. Yay.
Clouds.
That'll be great.
Yeah, I hope it'll be great. It's usually the most frustrating one, but anyway, we'll get there.
Fine. I'm sure.
Fantastic.
Heads up.
Yeah. Lots of blue and white. And yeah, but anyway, you've got all your notes and things there. So
Yeah.
yeah, I'll see you tomorrow morning for that one.
Lovely. Thank you, Jean.
Thank you.
See you all
Bye.
tomorrow.
Thank
Bye,
you.
guys.
Bye, ladies.
Bye.
Bye now.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
See you.
See ya.